Okay.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Assalatu wassalamu ala mursalin. Allahumma salli ala sayidina Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad. Alhamdulillah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh everyone. May peace be upon you wherever you are watching live tonight at South Ilahi. We pray that you are in good health, iman, and in well-being inshallah. Tonight we have someone special and someone who is very interesting for us to yeah, listen to her work. Knowing her work, sorry, and also learning a lot of things from her. Uh, let's welcome Sister Ameera Aslam, inshallah. How
Hi,
are you, Ameera?
Assalamualaikum everybody.
Salam. Okay, before we proceed, right, to start this interesting interview or discussion, I would say, I would like to formally introduce her to those who may not do not know her that well, right? So this is about her. Ameera Aslam is a writer, poet, editor, and activist. Her work has appeared in Karyawan, Ramadan.sg, Muslim.sg, Islamic.sg, Masjid Khalid, Darul Arkam, SimplyIslam.sg, Rumi Center, Masjid Naim, and more, insyaAllah. He edits, translates, and proofread for Nusantara Books, Wasila Press, Karyawan, and others. She was the founding editor of Muslimbuzz.sg, a popular online Muslim magazine. Her activism includes speaking out against domestic violence and supporting domestic violence survivors and raising awareness and funds for migrant workers in Singapore, SG Muslim for Migrant Workers, mashallah. Her activism work has been featured in Berita Harian, Straits Times, and Berita Media Corp. She currently works at a tech startup and also the world best crowdfunding platform, Launch Good, helping incredible Muslim all over the globe. Of course, we know she is from Singapore, and mashallah, is a blessing to know her. And we, really very happy to be with her tonight. First of all, Amira, thanks for being on board
Yes,
tonight and join us. And I would like to
thank
congratulate
you.
you, Sasul,
Thank
till date.
you.
I'm very nervous meeting someone, mashallah,
That's so
who
nonsense.
is
I'm the nervous one.
serious, who is mashallah. You read her, you heard what I said about her. You know, she is an editor, social activist, a poet, a writer. Mashallah, Allah preserve her. You know, having
Mm,
such women in our community is a blessing. You know, mashallah. Uh, so congratulations on the books once again, and
thank you.
so I would like to start this first. It's very interesting, the book desiring, and it is something that I would thought that someone like you seriously would be doing it, because I know from last time knowing you personally, you like to write poetry, right?
Yes.
And what a title, what an interesting title, desiring light, mashallah. And I remember you like to write poetry and you always like to comment on Facebook and so on. So the potential is there lah as a writer, of course, right? What make you? Of course, this is a common question you always get. What make you, or what inspire you to do this poetry book? And how long does it take? When is it begin?
Um, so interestingly, Brother Khalid, I'm really thankful that you even asked me to do this Facebook Live. Because if you remember, you were actually the first person who gave me a platform to read my poem. Um, it was 8th of August 2009. There was
Oh,
Mahithur Mustafa.
mashallah.
Yeah,
Oh,
we were
okay.
it was at Al Wehda. I
Ah,
remember there was Madhu Mustafa. I think they were even popular then. They were just like just a bunch of like
they were starting.
Syrian
Yeah,
students
yeah, yeah.
just starting out. And I think even members of Debu was there, if you remember.
Yep,
Mustafa
yep.
Debu, he was there, the group, yeah. And so you had asked me like, oh, would you want? Can you come and read some of your poem? And I was just like, what? Like really? So like you were actually the first person who like made me realize like, oh, like the I like people are actually reading my poetry, or like people actually want me to like read it out. And interestingly, that poem that I read that night in 2009
Yeah,
is the first poem in the book.
yeah.
It's the first one. Because the book is written such that
MashaAllah.
it's a collection
Oh,
chronologically. So like it's a collection of poems that I've written over like the past probably 12 years.
MashaAllah. So
Um,
is it servitude? Is it
is it what?
servitude? Is the
Servitude, yeah,
poem
exactly.
called okay. Since you mentioned about that, right? And that moment,
Yeah.
I also forgot actually. MashaAllah. But I saw your potential at that time, because I'm someone who always appreciate people who put in effort, and we are very DIY type. So I always appreciate and
Yeah.
I always enjoy reading. So before we proceed, right, Amira, I need a favor from you. Can you read
Oh
that poet
no.
for us tonight? Come on, man.
Okay,
We are
sure,
sharing the
Bismillah.
blessing on Monday night.
Inshallah. Okay, just a disclaimer, everybody. I really talk very fast, so I really said the
Don't
same
worry.
thing at Al Wehda in 2009. I said the same thing. I was like, I speak very fast. I always say like God is fair. Like he gave me the skill of writing. He didn't give me public speaking skills.
No,
But
it's okay.
okay, let me.
You're fine. Alhamdulillah.
Okay, so this is the second time that I'm reading this poem with Brother Khalid. Thank you. Okay, so
Yeah.
this one is called Servitude. So I
Inshallah.
wrote this. I probably was like 19 years old,
Allah.
baby. Okay, so
Alhamdulillah.
here goes. I
Inshallah.
remember I wrote this in Ramadan. So Bismillah. One day of servitude, first to Allah, then to Satan. My act of sujud, first to Allah, then to Satan. One hadith read, one bad word uttered, $1 donated, a Muslim slandered, hijab on my head, hijab over my heart, salawat on my lips, my eyes still blind. Tears flowed of repentance, yet my sins keep increasing with time. My prayer beats makes its rounds, yet my mind wanders when I pray. I spend a day to itikaf, but I obey and do what Satan say. Ya Allah, Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim, have pity on this slave of yours, whose deeds are little, whose sins are many, whose heart is broken, whose face is shaky, whose tears are running, whose desires are raising, whose hope is depleting, whose iman is wavering, whose love for you and your prophet is a lie. How can I love when I do not know? How can I say I do when I disobey so? How dare I call myself a Muslim when my deeds are done for other than him? What love is this that I neglect the lover? What servitude is this that I let down the creator? I'm desperate for guidance. I'm starving for your love. Cure me of my spiritual illness and beautify my character. Purify my intentions and purify my heart. Grant me true and sincere love for you and your Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, a love that will sustain to the life to come.
Allah. Inshallah. Beautiful. Woohoo. Inshallah.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's so beautiful the way it's written and the way you read it. Mashallah, I felt the connection,
Allah.
and perhaps people who watching this live right now, inshallah, they will be inspired to. Um, so just now
Yeah.
you're mentioning how you started, right? But I cut you off because I asked you to give us a favor by reading. So can you continue then? How it all started then, the book, yeah. How
Um.
it continue then
Yeah.
from experience, yeah.
Yeah. I guess I mean I've always been a bookworm. I've always liked writing and reading. I've always had a journal where I write for myself. Because I feel like writing is a way for me to not just like express myself, but also like make sense of my thoughts or like what's happening around me. And I guess I never really saw myself as a poet, or if I did write poetry, it was just like syok sendiri lah, just suka hati
Oh,
just because I like it when it rhymes, because I like music as well, right? I like music and I like lyrics, so like to me it was I didn't see a difference between like song lyrics with like poetry, because to me it's the same. Um, and I guess, and I'm also like a big kasida lover. Like I really, really love kasida because I realized like because I love words. And then, and I know like my heart totally comes alive when I'm listening to Kasida, when I'm singing Kasida. And I
MashaAllah.
was like I was thinking, you know, like if like I mean we write I mean I'm a writer, so I write so many words and I'm just like, oh my god, I don't know which of these words are beneficial or useful or whatever. But like I think my when I think about all these qasidas, I'm like, we are it's someone from like I don't know, a few hundred years ago wrote this Arabic poetry, but we are reading it today in 2019, 2020, singing along to it, and like we feel happy, we feel love for God, love for the Prophet Sallam. And I was like, I make intentions like, okay, hopefully I can write something like that one day. Like, and I mean, like, Kasida Burda is one of my, biggest inspirations, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the fact that we are reading it still today, and it's not just like, it's not just like the lyrical part, like where it's the rhyming scheme, macam on a technical poetry level, it's already beautiful to read, but
Mm-hmm.
like it's also like so full of barakah clearly, right? Like like okay, when you read it when you're sad and you feel so much better. and
MashaAllah.
and and obviously, if you know the backstory of like Imam Busari writing it, and then he was cured from his illness and all that, like I was like, I need that for me. Like I want to be able to
Wow.
write something that Allah will accept and like cure me of my nonsense lah, basically. I mean, I'm not there yet, clearly. I don't know if I'll ever get there, but like that's the intention that I have when I write poetry, I guess. Like I wanna one day have, like I wouldn't say I want to write a qasida, but I want to be able to write something to praise the Prophet Sallam and have it be like a gift from me to him. I mean,
MashaAllah.
it's probably really nonsense. Like, I mean, everybody praises the Prophet, right? So salam, and everybody like expresses their love in different ways. But I guess for me, it's just since writing is my thing, I'm like, okay, then I have to write one for him,
Yeah.
before I go, and hopefully he accepts it, inshallah.
Inshallah. I mean, it's
Yeah,
amazing actually, the way you describe why you write and what's your aspiration. And I think we learn a lot actually tonight from you, inshallah. Um, this poetry was from that particular event. I think is 2009. I think, right? So from that
yeah,
2009 and to where it is 2020, inshallah, 11 years.
yeah. Wow.
So one poetry, how long does it takes for you? And I know that each poetry macam datang hal gitu kan, macam it's a journey. Whether you're sad, whether you're happy, it just come through your heart. It's like Sheikh Ibrahim say, like it's a seas of the divine, like boom,
Yeah.
you know. So for you yourself, 9 years, mashallah, it take a lot of effort. It's not just your mind, but I think your soul and your heart together in this book. So people are actually
Yeah.
traveling with you. So how is it then? How long does it take? You say that you are not there yet, and you belum tengok I tulis lagi meripik. That kind of thing. I try, but my wife always said try harder. That kind of thing. Yeah, but how long does it take? Then do you edit? Because a lot of people also want to know about poetry. They also inspired
Yeah.
everybody. Because it's like it comes to your heart. You want to express yourself. You want to not say to be known or to be told, but that is a sort of reliving your soul and letting go of everything that is in your heart, right? So how long it takes? Yeah.
Uh, well, that's a difficult question to answer because like some poems come all at once, and then some like it comes in like bits and pieces. And so like I told you, like I've always had like a notebook, or like now because we're all in our phones, right? Like I actually have like email thread to myself. So whenever I feel like, oh, there's a line that comes to me or whatever, I'll just email it to myself, and then it doesn't become a poem then, right? But sometimes like I just sit down, and because of maybe whatever's happening around me, or like whatever I'm feeling just like so intense at the moment, that I can like really sit down, and then the poem just comes out. So so it really depends. Like it's not like there isn't like one size fits all, or like I don't really have a method to the madness really. But like, so what I can really say is that if there are those of you who really want to write like more poetry, or make it like a practice, it's really, you have to do two things. One is to read poetry, lots and lots of it, and the second is to write lots and lots of it. Just like Like I think you have to. I don't know. I mean, that's what works for me, which is that the more I practice, the more I write, like it comes easier. Or so I think one of my favorite poets is Mary Oliver, and
Mashallah.
she wrote a poetry handbook. I think it's called. I have it here somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah. So if you guys want, it's called Mary Oliver a poetry handbook. And so it's really interesting. She mentions how poetry is an appointment or with your heart and your mind. So like your heart
Mm-hmm.
is always actually just waiting, but you don't always pay attention to it. So like the more you pay attention to it, the more you show up, then the heart will be more generous in wanting to share what's inside. Which I think is really lovely. Like it's such a Sufi concept, right? Like we talk about the heart, the Ghazali talks about like the marvels of the heart and all these kind of things. And that's why I really like writing in Ramadan. Like I joined Rumi Center, Baraka Blue heads Rumi Center.
Yeah.
So I think 2 years ago I don't know whether that was the first time he started it, but 2 years ago was when I participated. It's a 30-day writing challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And so you just sit and write every single day. And I really enjoyed it. Even though I don't think I managed to complete 30 poems in all 30 days. But just having that discipline to just sit down, and especially because it's Ramadan. Ramadan is like so special to all of us, right? It's such a magical time. Like it's always my favorite month. Like every time Ramadan comes, I'm like, oh my god, like it's my favorite time ever. And like it's so beautiful because like when you're just focused on ibadah lah, basically in Ramadan, right? Like you're not fasting, you're not fasting, like you're fasting, so you're not worried about food and whatever other things, and like you just like and because Satan is not around, like I think it really helps you to really like pay attention to your spiritual heart, right? And yeah, so those two things are like you're emptied of like food, and then Satan is not around to whisper nonsense at you, and that you have all this like wonderful, like everything that you do, even breathing is rewarded, even sleeping is rewarded. I'm just like it's the best time ever. Like I love it so much. And so I think like it really allows your heart to finally like breathe again lah. Macam for 11 months you are like so like bogged down by your nerves. I mean it's not that the nerves go away in Ramadan. We still have to fight it, but like at least like shaitan is out of the picture. It really helps a lot, I think. And then I think
Yeah.
that really allows your heart to for you to even pay attention to what it's saying, you know. Um and so like I did it 2 years ago, and then I realized that I'm gonna do it again. Like I wanna do it every Ramadan. And like, macam even this first poem that I read to you, I wrote it in Ramadan. That was before any 30-day writing challenge or whatever. But like I think Ramadan just provides that context where you are able to just focus on your heart. And so yeah, I just love
The
writing.
spiritual environment helps. The-
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah. I
So
don't know if I answered the question. I forgot what the question was.
it's okay. Um,
Yeah.
I was saying like about the inspiration that you have and all that, right? So after you write, macam some people when they really written like lyrics, you were talking about music just now, and sometimes when you write, then you say, not that good enough,
Mm.
not so so. So how you have that confidence then? Like this is it, I write, I'm confident with what I written is from my heart, definitely from my heart, affirm, istiara tak, that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
how you have it takes a lot of courage to express yourself because I myself realize that when I write it takes a lot of courage, especially macam you takut, people like macam ya eleh macam betul, that kind of thing, nak jadi poet, that kind of thing. So um
Yeah.
and we lack of poet in Singapore, like really really come out with this kind of book and work. Of course we have someone like Nur Iskandar and the Malay writers and
Yeah.
poet, but for English, mashallah, that's why I'm very proud of you and very happy for you. And that's the thing lah. How you get that confident? Macam you say, okay, I don't really care what people say. This is my word. This is from my heart, and this is my journey. Yeah. Come on, share with us.
I have no idea. Once I get the confidence, I'll tell you because I don't have it. Like I'm so nervous today because I'm like, oh my god, not only do I have to talk about my book, I'm so nervous that people are gonna read it. I was like, oh my god, what were you thinking? Now everybody is going to read your words. I'm like, it's so late now. Like the book is out there. But I guess okay, I don't know if it's really confidence in the sense like oh I want people to read it or I know the poem is complete. So like, I think there's a two different questions. So like so I feel like once I how I know a poem is like oh there's nothing else that I can like add or remove from it. Um I mean I just read it several times and I just need to be sure that I managed to express what I wanted in the
Mm.
poem. And that yeah, I'm not really sure whether that it's not that helpful lah. But one thing that I do is when I do write poetry or whatever is like I have my wudu lah. Like I don't want to write
Inshallah.
without wudu. Um, just the extra precaution, right? Like because I just don't want it to be a self-serving like I said earlier like a shop sendiri thing. Like I wanted to make sure that it's like protected in a sense, and like if people read it, they don't get some like weird idea, which is another issue because once people read it, like they have their own experience with the poem. Like you might say this thing, but they get something else. So I can't control what they get out of it. But like hopefully, like if I Bismillah, ya Allah help me, and I say my wudu, like okay, like it's
Inshallah.
hopefully like okay whatever.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and so the other part is when you talk about uh the the confidence in writing the book. I don't know if it's confidence per se. It's I mean people like you who give me a platform 11 years ago. And then like over the years, I guess people have mentioned to me like, oh, I felt the same way. I just didn't know how to put it in words. And so I was like, I guess when more people say that to me, I was like, oh, maybe there's a value in publishing the poems, not really because I want to be known as a poet. I don't think I want to be known as a poet, but more like I just don't want people to. I guess there's two reasons. One is that I don't want people to feel alone because like my poems I think were written it's mostly about being on like the spiritual path. And as you and I know, the spiritual path is extremely difficult, right?
Yeah.
It's so difficult, and I guess I didn't know how hard it was before I got on it. But I just want I want people to read it and understand like okay, it is hard, yes, but there's also like the light at the end of the tunnel, or like there's also a lot of beauty, even with whatever pain that you have to go through with all the losses and the grief and whatever. There's always God's mercy and God's love is really always more, so much more, right? And yeah, I'm hoping that it gives people hope. And then the second thing is also I feel like you mentioned like there's not a lot of poets. I don't know if that's true because I think I read a lot of poetry books, right? So to me, it's like, oh, there's a lot of poetry. I like reading those, but
Inshallah.
I was also thinking like life is so hard, it's so difficult, and so harsh,
Yeah.
and like the arts haven't been given as much attention.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and macam even when you see like in the movies or like song lyrics now, it's not exactly wholesome. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And like, I think in the past it used to be like more. Okay, I don't know when I talk about the past. I don't know which year I'm talking about, but like to me, it's like poetry allows you to get in touch with your softer side. Because otherwise,
Mm-hmm.
you just read the news or read I mean, there's so many terrible things happening always. Anyway, now we are like super connected with injustices happening everywhere. Like I feel like
Yeah.
it's even more important to read poetry now because it reminds you of your humanity. Or at least it's for me. Like for me, that's my medium. But if for somebody else it's dance, or if it's for somebody else it's painting or whatever, then you really need to get in touch with that artistic or spiritual side in whichever way it is for you. Like for me, it's just because I like words, I like poetry. Then that I'm hoping that people will find it like a relief lah. Like it's like yeah, like okay, you're not alone. Spiritual path is hard, yes, but there's also a lot of like hope, inshallah.
Mashallah. Beautifully said. Yeah, I agree with you with the current condition of the world, and the world need something to beautify our soul, and
Yeah,
poetry actually play a very huge critical role. I remember I met some scholars or all those saints, wali wali Allah, and they say that Khalid, what we need is to revive poetry, Islamic poetry, because we need to understand our life is to benefit each other, the souls, and we can help each other rather than pulling down each other. So inshallah, and I think it's also important to have a teacher also, right? And you have it,
Yeah, for sure.
and you have it. So that's make it a bit more easier. And because the heart knows like, okay, ni macam tak kena, so okay don't want, and ni macam, oh, okay, this one suit. Yeah, because I felt that to write something, and I'm really what we call, I'm not amazed, but I'm truly how to, I miss the word, I can't remember exact word to describe it, but I felt that the way how you see it is very interesting, macam tak nak syok sendiri, tak nak
Mm.
macam you think like macam you are in your own world, but here you are sharing your heart with the whole world. And that's what makes it the different when you have a guide, a spiritual guide, where you navigating your words, your heart to write those words. You know, my heart speaks, and the world is listening. So, Michelle, and I can see
Wow.
that. No, nothing. I'm talking
Masya
about
Allah,
you.
Masya Allah.
And talking about that, right? I'm looking through the contents of your book, mashallah. Chapter one, searching. Chapter two, journeying. I should have put in into the what you call it, but it's okay. It's okay.
Okay.
Chapter
I
one,
can show it.
searching.
Okay.
What?
I can show it on the screen if it's just
Okay, yeah,
fine.
yeah.
Let me
So chapter one, searching. Chapter two, journeying, and chapter three, coming home. Inshallah. So profound. Knowing Amira, I'm just talking to the viewers. Knowing Amira since she was in NTU, so I can relate to the first two lah. And then the third one is Ramadan, mashallah, which she described just now, that Ramadan je everything opens up for her, mashallah. So uh 11 years, three chapter. Can you imagine 20 years, how many chapters really? Beautiful. You know, it's beautiful. Keep on writing and, inspire all of us. So, how would you describe chapter one? Of course, I know your journey because I know you since you're at that stage. But I think for the benefit of those who are watching you for the first time, or those who do not know you when you were in NTU and graduate, and mashallah, she's still the same person, mashallah. So how
Oh
would
my
you
God, I hope I'm not the same.
how
I
would
hope I'm better, please.
how would you describe chapter one then? Servitude in the need of answer when you have nothing to lose. Ni macam lagu album pertama itulah, like the rain has come, explainable, fly, for
Yeah,
Maulana on your 19, mashallah, Israel, and it shows that the beauty of poetry is really from the heart. And whenever I read Rumi or maybe Emre Yunus or even some other poetry like Hafiz and all that, like the Persian and the Turkish and even the African poets, this came to my
yeah.
mind. And this really, make me travel also with you, and yeah, through all the saints and those who you mentioned, that everyone has a connection to everything.
Mm.
So let us hear what she has to say about the chapter one, searching. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, so the book is divided into three chapters. So as Brother Khalid has said, the first chapter is called Searching. So I think at the time that was before I found my spiritual path basically, and I just felt like something was missing. Like I was praying, fasting, but like tak ada kick. No lah, I wouldn't
Okay.
say tak ada kick lah.
Inshallah. That's
But
okay.
I was searching for something deeper. Like I remember like the question that I was asking at that time was um how do people love the divine, right?
Oh,
Like to me it was such a weird concept. I was like, yeah, I remember I wasn't even uni then. I was in JC and I was at Pasir Ris Library. I used to hang out
mhm.
there. And yeah, so I think I came across probably some Sufi book, and I was like, they were talking about loving the divine, loving Allah, and I was like, huh, love Allah. Like to me, it was like, growing up, like I only knew to like obey him, like, oh, don't do this, don't do that, and then you go to heaven lah, macam. But I was never, I think, exposed to like loving him, like having an actual relationship with
Mm-hmm.
God and the Prophet Salam, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, what does that even mean? How can you love the divine lah? Macam, isn't he so abstract? Like he's so far away, and like I
Yeah.
just felt like he was so. And on some level, I also was like, he's so scary. Like, how do you love God, basically, right? And
Yep.
so I think that's really started the journey. And so I was like, and the more that I realized that there were these people called Sufis, and there were this thing called Sufism, I was like, what are they talking about? And how did you even get to that point where they can say, I love God? And I was like, I want to know what that is like, because
Mm.
that sounds amazing, right?
Yeah.
And so I guess that was the first chapter, which is like, searching. I was really searching for like, how does somebody love God? Like,
Mm-hmm.
to me, it was a very strange concept. And then, of course, Alhamdulillah, like, that was when I then met, I mean, I never met him, Shenazim, but I got to know about, Tariqa, or like the spiritual path, and how that was how you begin to have, Islam, Iman, Ihsan, right? And so Ihsan is like, knowing that Allah
Yeah.
is watching you and stuff like that. But also on the bigger level, is like to actually like love him, lah, kan? And
Yeah.
so the first part searching was written when I was still searching still. And then when I found my spiritual path is when it was called Journey, the second chapter, which is either the bulk of the poetry was written in these 10 years when I found my spiritual path, and then realized I was like, oh, it's not a walk in the park. Like it's actually very hard. Like a lot of things are gonna be taken away from you, if you're really serious about like being on the path lah. But I mean, okay, I don't want to scare people. Like, yes, a lot of things will be taken away from you, but you also be given like a lot more. So like, just stay on the path, stay on course. Um, and then the chapter three is coming home, because it felt like I finally am able to answer that question that I first asked at the beginning of the journey, which is like, how can someone love God? Like, I mean, I don't want to macam faham say like, oh, I love God now, but like I feel like now I have a very different relationship with him than I did
Yeah.
obviously in 2008, 2009, right? Like now I can really like, I really feel in my heart like, oh my God, thank you so much. Like I really feel this whole, I'm just overwhelmed with like gratitude for him, and I really see God
Mm.
being so kind to all of us, like giving me like everything that I had in my life, like everything was planned beautifully. And yeah, I'm just like awash with like gratitude and probably love as well.
MashaAllah.
And so coming home, is because I felt like this whole book, macam
Yeah.
it ends because it answered that first question when I first started out. So I don't know what the next journey and the next chapter will look like. Inshallah, I hope it will still be like, I'll still have this faith in my heart and still have this like gratitude or whatever. But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as you also know, like I mean, at the beginning, the first chapter, I realized obviously when I was going through compiling all of this poetry last year, and reading it back, I was like, oh, you know what? Like at that time when I was going through it, I didn't have the words to explain what it was that I was going through. I was just like, I mean, I'm generally a very happy, optimistic, happy-go-lucky person, but during that searching period, I was like so sad all the time. I was like, just, yeah, I just felt all this sadness, but I didn't know what I was sad about. And then much later, obviously, the more you study, the more you read about like Sufism and stuff like that, then I realized like, oh, actually, what I was going through was contraction. Like, oh, there's a word for it. There's actually something that people on the path go through, like cupboard and basket, right? Contraction, expansion, and whatever. But I mean, it's obviously in hindsight lah. That I was like, oh, that was what it was. But when you were in it, I was like, I had no idea what's happening. I was like, why am I so sad all the time? Why am I crying? Like, there's no reason. Like, I think my life is okay. Like, why do I feel so like that contraction feeling lah? And so yeah, so I just feel like the 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 poetry that's in here is just like really, it felt like yeah, it deserves to be together because it feels like completed one that whole 10 years of Konon on the spiritual path lah. So I don't know what the future will look like lah.
Yeah.
We'll see, inshallah.
MashaAllah. It's actually very, I would say, uh, is really a continuity in your own self, in your own soul, right? But in chapter two, I realized that you're also sharing about whatever that you go through or whatever that you seen or experience,
yeah.
right? And how do you connect everything then? It must be it must be a very deep thoughts on it, the muhasabah, I would feel. And
Hmm.
I felt that that's why I say that poetry is a beauty from the soul, because somehow it's not a healing. I want to say it's healing, but it's just soothing in a way how you see things are, and you're not holding on to it, and you just
Hmm.
say, perhaps you just say like, this is what I go through, but in the end is going back to Allah, and I'm just here to share with you what I experience as a human, as a woman, right? But does it occur to you when you write all this, right, that it trigger or it really create an impact that you cry? I mean, don't mind me asking, right? And because that is how you feel the soul in the book, in a poet book, right? Because it's all from the what I mentioned earlier. It's all from the soul, the heart. So
Hmm.
how you digest that then? How do you go about with it then? Yeah.
Um, I guess I mean I mentioned earlier, like writing was the way that I make sense of things, right? Like
Yeah, yeah,
whether it's journaling or whatever. So yeah, so some things you can say in a word like, "Oh, I'm feeling angry about this thing," but it
yeah.
wouldn't be as impactful, or at least I wouldn't be able to convey this intense emotion that I'm feeling
Uh-huh.
in a few sentences. But I can do it in like a poem, for example. So it doesn't have to be anger or sadness or whatever, but also like intense feelings of like gratitude, which is I think towards the end of the book lah. The starting of the book was
Yeah,
a bit
yeah,
emotional lah. But yeah,
yeah,
like I don't know much. For me, I think I've always been very introspective to the point of being too navel gazing. Like people like I can be a bit self-absorbed maybe. Like I think so much about a little thing that I forget. Like there's a lot of this happening, but that also means that I try to always see the links lah. Macam like I think my favorite feeling or emotion in the world. I mean, I have a few, but like one of my favorite is when I managed to connect or something in my brain connects like, oh, I heard this from this teacher 5 years ago, but I just read this poem and I saw this in this movie and I was like, oh, this makes sense for me. Like this is what it means or whatever. Like being able to like synthesize these feelings and and for me is like being a Muslim, like we already know that everything is a sign from God, right? Like whether it's something good or something bad or like even whatever is created, like nothing is created without a reason. Kan? So macam even whatever is happening, there's always like a reason or a lesson to be learned. And so I'm always very like, what is the lesson I'm supposed to learn here? Like, what does that mean? And like, I want to make sure that I am um I am always reflecting lah. And I mean I'm not always, you know, on that mode lah. I'm just
yeah. I
human lah.
understand. Yeah,
I'm shitless half the time also. But like I try to like to me I don't see a difference between like I don't think less of God when I listen to a Jason Mraz song, for example, or if I watch a movie, like it doesn't mean that I'm not thinking of God. Like I'm still like, oh, like what is the links between all these things? And so I guess like chapter two, like it's that like the synthesizing of like the attitude that I go through or what I'm feeling, but also what's happening in the world or like I don't know. I feel like maybe that's just what it is like because writing is how I make sense of things. So
mm.
yeah, so that's how I write. Like I mean, like I don't know if you were referring to a specific poem in chapter two or it's just
I think in chapter
all.
two it shows the your completely journey. That's why I like you really talk from your heart lah, your heart. Chapter two you say journey. When I read the title, it's really a journey, and because maybe I know you and I know you personally, but then again, macam it's how everything is connected. The good, the bad,
Yeah,
the sad, the ugly.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think that's the other reason that I wanted to write the book as well, which is to because I'm seeking it for myself, which is balance. Like I
Mm-hmm.
feel like macam sometimes we think that like Islam is just when you do your ibadah, right? Like when you pray, when you fast, okay, that's
Yeah.
Islam. And then
Yeah.
everything else you do in life is separate from it. And like to me, macam that was I guess biggest challenge like growing up is like I wanted to be able to like balance like the dunya and the akhirah, the arts and the science, the like whatever different things that we have, macam like my own um do I chase like corporate success or like how do I get success in the akhirah and all these kind of things. I'm trying to, really find that like that balance.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean it's a whole journey. I think everybody has to go through it themselves and figure out what works for them best and stuff like that. And so I feel like I only now macam I think I mentioned in the so after every chapter there's an author's note to explain what was the poems about before, just to give a bit of a context. So in chapter 2 at the end of it, the author's note, I talk about how um being on a spiritual path like provided me with that grounding to like I felt like it was like the whole 10 years of being on a spiritual path macam uh if I didn't have my every Thursday night zikir and the
Mm-hmm.
maulid every Thursday night, or the macam the spiritual is actually very it's very regimented, right? Like there's okay, you must do this at what time. This is what you do. This is how many zikir you have to do. This is how many salawat you have to do. And like, and obviously nobody is going to like, oh, do you do or not, or whatever. But it's like your own self. You feel like I need
Yeah.
to take this medicine for myself. And
Yeah.
if you miss it, you feel like macam tak kena something is off, right? And so, I mean, obviously I realize it now lah, as like a wiser 33-year-old soon to be woman, right? But at that time I was like, oh, so difficult. I must do all this thing. Like, how am I ever going to like complete it? But but I guess because I also really wanted, I guess I was very degil lah. So, I really want what these people are talking about. Like, when they talk about they love God, they love the Prophet, I want that for myself. So I was like,
Mashallah.
I'm going to do.
Mashallah.
But I mean, it was very hard because I thought, like, I thought I was going to be able to hack it. Like, oh, they say they take 20 years. No, I'm going to do it in 6 months. I'm going to do it. Like, I
Mashallah.
think, I don't know,
Mashallah.
lah. I don't know about other people, lah. But I was a very idiotic, macam. I think it's a symptom of the modern times, right? You want everything fast, right? And that was obviously one lesson that I had to learn. Is like, no, if you want this, you have to stick at it for at least 20, 30 years. Then you can like, but like at the beginning, I was like, how come I still never dream of all these things? How come the people have all this like fancy vision? Like, I don't have
Yeah.
any of those things. I'm like, what is happening? Right? But I was like, yeah, and then I realized like the gift of being on a spiritual path is being on a spiritual path. It's not all this extra bonus whatever things people talk about, like walking water lah, or like dream of this, dream of that, or whatever. It's like I feel like right now today, I swear, like the fact that I get to salat, I just feel so happy. I'm like, oh my god, thank you God for letting me salat. Like, you know what I mean? Like at that
Mashallah.
time, it's like, oh, how many rakat can I do? Or like, especially Ramadan, I want to do like 20, like checklist and all
Mashallah.
this kind of things. But now it's like I feel like it's all a gift, like macam. And if I didn't have, I guess that whole I don't want to say training lah because that training sounds like as if I really put in so much effort like that. But like it's just that attempt that I had, and especially having like obviously good companions around
Yeah.
who obviously do more than you. You realize that it's possible to be uh like a Sufi in the 21st century lah. Like otherwise you read the books macam they live in some kampung or, or they were in like 100 years ago. Like I was like, how does a Sufi look like in the 21st century? Like and especially for women, like I mean for guys you can see like maybe they wear the big sarban or like they wear all the certain things. Of course at the time lah. Now I obviously understand like Sufis wear you know like you can't really tell who is a Sufi or who isn't a Sufi by just the outside lah. You know, but
Yeah.
yeah, like I guess now I hopefully I'm a bit wiser and I just really appreciate that whole uh the whole okay, I really don't want to say the word training, but the whole struggle of
Mhm.
trying to do all these things because it has I mean that whole because I don't think I'm a very disciplined person naturally. I don't think anybody is. Our nerve is so rebellious kan.
Yeah.
But like be able to do all that and keeping to it even though some days you miss or whatever, like now I'm able to, be grateful for the prayer, for example, like just be grateful to be like a Muslim and not asking for like nonsense things like dream of this or have a vision or whatever. Nonsense tak perlu benda lah. Like maybe that's something that God will give to someone else or whatever. But like to me, it's like I'm just glad that I wake up and I have good health. I have a roof over my head.
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah already.
Yeah, mashallah, interesting sharing, and I think a lot of us are learning through you tonight, mashallah. Uh, Singapore, we mentioned, like, I felt that you are one of those few poet that I know in English. I'm talking about English and
Mm.
Muslim also. So we relate to Muslim and everything. So, what do you hope to achieve, or I will not say gain, achieve lah, the right word, right? Or your expectation from this book, right? So when you write, you want to share your blessing, you want to share your heart with all of us, with humanity. But then
Yes.
also came to a point when you dah nak release the book, you dah publish the book. So like, okay, what's next? So do you have any expectation? Because in Singapore, as I said, poetry is not something that people appreciate that much, because I'm being honest lah, we are more into trend and something that is
Mm.
popular kan. But I really appreciate poetry and the work you do. So for you yourself, what is your expectation then?
Um, I so when I was growing up, when you say like, oh, when we talk about poetry, like you think about William Shakespeare, or
Inshallah.
like all this like macam, and like
Yeah.
I always had this idea in my head like a poet like sits in a room
Mm-hmm.
top of a mountain by themselves and then
Yeah.
write a book and then yeah, whatever. And so I'm hoping that people will realize that I am a
Mm-hmm.
poet. I am a very
Mashallah.
busy woman. I live in the 21st century. I wear jeans, but I'm also a poet. Like I'm also a Muslim
Inshallah.
poet. Like it doesn't have to look a certain way. Because I'm hoping that the younger generation understands that like their voice matters. Like they should write. They should have confidence in expressing themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And if they had the same ideas that I had, which is like, oh, a poet like sits in the ivory tower or in the some petapa and some mountain,
Betapa
then I don't have the luxury of petapa in the mountain. I hope
Betapa
I wish I could, but I can't. Like, and so it's just I just wanted to know that like it's okay. Like it doesn't matter what the conditions are. And also I feel like when we were exposed or when we took literature in school,
Mm-hmm.
like macam they always talk about, or maybe there's a like a big we were exposed to like I guess Western poets from like Victorian era or whatever, and they would talk about like oh the changing seasons like summer and winter and the snow and the nature, a lot of nature, like a lot of poetry is talking about nature, right? And then as for me growing up in Singapore, I'm like I see MRT, I see like buildings, macam it's not inspiring in a way, like it's not like nature, right? So like when I was traveling in the US like earlier this year, um yeah, and I was like with the mountains or in like really at a very nature place. I was like that was when I really actually wrote a lot more poems because it really matters, right? The environment matters. But then I also want people to know that like yes, the environment obviously has an impact or can help you to feel more bunga-bunga to write poetry.
Inshallah.
But like, but it's about, I think like the most important part about poetry or even just spirituality. Actually, I don't even want to talk about poetry. I think the most important thing about spirituality is to be able to hear your own heart. Like, is to be able to like sit down with yourself. It doesn't matter what's happening out there. It doesn't have to be in a mountain. You can be in the middle of like a night market or whatever, and you still have to be able to hear yourself or think of God lah. And so I'm hoping that when they read this, they don't think that oh, Ameera Aslam is somebody who don't interact with the outside world or I live in some whatever dungeon ke apa. No, it's not. I am working every day. I am doing all sorts of things. And you still have to, yeah, it's just important to really like sit down with yourself and make sure that you don't lose that relationship or that connection to your heart. Like, especially in this modern times, it's very very easy to just yeah suddenly it's like oh 1 week is gone and then 3 weeks or 1 month and like you're like oh my god I don't even know if I listen to my heart at all this whole
Mashallah.
month. Like so it's just like you just have to really like work at it. Like it gets easier the more you pay attention. I think
Inshallah. This is
that's what I would
profound.
say.
Really, this is profound, inshallah. A beautiful
Yeah.
uh, words of wisdom be learning, mashallah.
Yeah.
Um, how do you publish? I mean, how do you goes about that? It makes Bilal book to publish your book, and was it in the beginning that you wanted to publish yourself, or is already in the pipeline for Bilal? Share with us because there are a lot of people watching, and maybe they want to do something like you. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, when I wanted to do or wanted to publish the book, I also had no idea like what route I was gonna take because I had no idea what even required even. And so I asked a few people. So I asked Fadila Wahid for her experience in publishing her books.
Mm.
And then but she did self publishing, right? So when you self publish, basically you do everything yourself lah from A to Z lah.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
I knew that I couldn't do a self publishing route because I'm so busy. I have a full time job. There's no way that I can dedicate more time to like either market the book or like design the cover and all the other things.
Yeah.
Like I realized that publishing a book takes a lot. There's a lot of work involved. Right? It's not
Yeah.
just the
Yeah.
writing
It's
part. The
true.
writing
It's
is one
true.
small part. And there's so many things else. And I was like, I can't do the self publishing route. Like, I really don't have the time or resources or capacity to do it. And so I actually sent, and so I read up on how you go about your publishing like a poetry book. And then I find out that like, oh, you have to like if you're writing like a novel or a book, you usually you can send in your manuscript like maybe the first two chapters to different publishing houses, and then if they're interested, then they will. I mean, they can come with an arrangement, and then you can complete your book and then send it to them. But you have to send at least
Inshallah.
I think 1 or 2 chapters. But for me, it was a
Mm.
poetry book, so I find out like I was reading about it like I just Google lah, I just like okay how do publishing houses decide and so I found out that they said like okay, if you want to publish a poetry book, then you have to submit at least 5 poems, I think. And then if they
Mhm.
like it, then they will say, okay, you send us your manuscript, and then we can decide on whether we want to publish your book with us. And so I sent actually so I chose 5 poems and I sent it to a few publishing houses. I really wanted to publish with Daybreak Press, which is Rabata's publishing arm with Ansu
Oh yeah.
Tamawaje. Because I really love her, right? And I love that because Daybreak Press is like really specific to Muslim women writers.
More okay.
Um, and
Inshallah.
so I thought I really wanted to publish it with them. Um, and then so they got back to me. They said they liked her poems, and but they were not looking to publish a poetry book in the pipeline. So they were not planning to do a poetry book lah. But they did take 2 of the poems and they will publish it in like a poetry anthology or literary journal. They mentioned it.
Mashallah.
But they were not going to do a poetry book lah. So I was like, okay, so I'm gonna have to look for others. So I think I yeah, so I was Google. I was like, okay, I heard of Bilal books. I heard of Irfan. I think Ibrahim Warda was the one who told me like, oh, why don't you contact Irfan? I think Fadila. One of those. Somebody told me like, oh, why don't you
Okay.
talk to Irfan? I think he and his wife are starting a publishing company. And so I met them, and then we talked, and then we discussed the options that we had about publishing. And
Mhm.
so like, I really like how they were like doing things and stuff. So I was like, and then they were like, yeah, we would love to publish your book. And I was like, okay, let's do
Mashallah.
it. Yeah,
Mashallah. Barak. It's very inspiring for a lot of us who are watching and listening. Never give up in what you do and always believe in what you do and keep trying because Allah is always
yeah,
there for you. Yeah.
yeah. You
So,
have to really send your manuscript to like several places lah. Like, macam for me, I think I also sent to what's the popular one in Malaysia, Iman Publishing, I think.
oh yeah,
But
Iman.
they said that they will take at least 3 to 6 months to get back to you. And so by then I had already spoken to Bilal Book. I was like, okay, let's just go with you guys.
Yeah,
Yeah.
inshallah. So, Amira, I'm just curious, or maybe you had done this, or maybe you have this in your mind, or you have not think about it. But have you ever thought like doing like teaching how to write poetry to there's a lot of souls out there who
Um,
aspire to be like you. So
no,
yeah,
wait. I mean, so, like he just had one with Sukina Tozrim, right? Like
yeah,
I'm nowhere near her level. Like she can do teaching because she has done it so much longer than I have. I don't even know how many copies this book will sell. So like, I
inshallah you
I
do
don't think I
well.
can.
We will promote for you.
No, I mean that's
Yeah.
not my point. My point is like I don't know if I'm at the level to be able to teach others yet lah. Like
Yeah.
I just I mean my only lesson at the moment to share is just like your voice matters. You read a lot of poetry, you write poetry, you practice it. Inshallah, you get like better at it. But I don't know if I can do like a poetry workshop or class to like talk about techniques and stuff. I
Inshallah
probably
you
just repeat
will.
whatever Mary Oliver says in this book. Like I don't know if I have anything like for
Inshallah you
myself,
have.
but
I think different poetry,
yeah,
different poet is unique because I met many of them and I felt that each one of them, their ability to write is through different means, different ways. And even looking at you into your content, right? Mashallah, it's it's a journey of the soul, like what I said. So if you can,
yeah,
I hope you will consider to teach, to a lot of aspiring souls out there who wants not to be like you, but to walk like you. To
mm,
knowing how to walk and fall and stand and walk again. That kind of thing. So, Amira, mashallah, we already near to 1 hour. Amazing, amazing
yeah.
night, blessed night. Um, w- w- what would what would you like to say and share tonight before we end this interview, this discussion? Yeah, any last words you like to say for tonight?
Last words. Um, I guess I probably have mentioned it already, but it's just maintaining that connection to God or finding what works for you. Like if for me it's poetry, but if for you it's art or music or nature or whatever. Like I think it's very important that you do it regularly in scheduled doses because it's
Inshallah,
so easy. Like this life is really like already one is very very hard and two it goes very very fast. So if you don't macam uh you're not paying attention to your heart, then it's very easy to just get swept away with the currents lah. So yeah,
inshallah,
that's my lesson.
mashallah. By the way, Amira, when will this book be available and where will it be available?
So at the moment it is open for pre-orders on Bilal Books website. Um, but and then if you order now, you'll be able to get it by 1st of August, inshallah. And
Mm-hmm.
then I think after that, from probably like August onwards, if you're not doing the pre-order, it will be in Wardah Books, my favorite bookstore, inshallah.
Mashallah, mashallah, mabruk.
Thank
So
you.
yeah. Anyway, thank you very much, Amira, for being on board with
Thank
us
you so
tonight.
much for having me.
It's a blessing for us to host you, and we learn a lot from you. And we hope that all those who are viewing right now and later or tomorrow or in the future, because this video will be ongoing. So,
Oh my
mashallah.
god.
So we pray that this interview, this discussion, will be a blessing to many out there watching it.
Inshallah.
Inshallah.
I hope.
Amen.
Please
So, with
pray
this,
for me, everybody.
we pray for you,
I need
inshallah.
everybody who's watching this to please pray for me. Like I need your prayers. I swear.
Yes, yes.
You have no idea.
Yeah, we will pray for you, of course, inshallah. And we like to say thank you very much to you, and
Yeah.
have a great night. And
Thank
I
you.
hope to see you again. We can work together
Inshallah.
again, inshallah. And
Inshallah.
take care.
Inshallah.
May Allah preserve you with good health, knowledge,
Amin.
and lots of
Amin.
more beautiful poetry from you.
Amin. Inshallah. Thank you.
Yeah.
And for you also and everybody who's watching, like, Allah bless us all.
I mean.
Inshallah.
Yeah, see you again, inshallah. Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam.
So, alhamdulillah, that was an interesting and profound interview with Sister Ameera Aslam, sorry, on her books, poetry books, Desiring Light, which is coming out soon in August. Right. So just to make announcement for those who are interested to do Korban in West Africa, in Senegal, you can still do your payment and registration at our FB and even our Instagram. And also you can call this number 967044771 for any inquiry. Right, 967044771. Right, any inquiry you want to make on the Korban. right? And this Wednesday, don't forget that we have a continuation on the interesting, class, I would say, on architecture, the history and theory of architectural Islam, right? The body, image, and spirit of place by Dr. Faris and Brother Faizan, 8:30 or so, on Sweet Lahi FB. So with this, I would like to wish you a pleasant night with your family and your loved ones. May Allah preserve all of you in good health, protect you from any harm, and suffice all our need. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everyone.